everybody. I'm so thrilled today that I am having a chat with Elaine Birchall, a social worker and a coach in Canada. And she's been working with the hoarding population for 20 something years. And I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with Elaine. And so let me not waste time. So can you introduce yourself in your own words to us, Elaine?
Absolutely. I'm Elaine Birchall. I'm a social worker. I have a master's degree. I've specialized in nothing but hoarding disorder, treatment and intervention for the past just coming up to 23 years. I do therapy. I also do coaching. We do intensive interventions when they're necessary. I have a practice on Zoom internationally, as far away as Tokyo, South Africa, half the United States. And so I just say that because I want you to realize you're in very good company if you're listening and you suffer from hoarding disorder or you have hoarding behaviors that you're not happy with. You're in very good company in large numbers. All right. So I wrote a book co-authored with Suzanne Cronkite, Conquer the Clutter. It's in print, audiobook format, and the audiobook format has all of the tools and resources. I think there are 27 tools and resources in that book. And they are all available on a special website if you choose the audiobook format, if you feel you need it. And they are interactive and tabulatable, so you can track your progress, or if there's a slip, you can catch it sooner. I am the host of a free podcast. You do have to subscribe for security reasons. You go to www.hoarding.ca, which is my website. And the podcast is titled Conquer the Clutter. And it is every Wednesday morning from 11 until noon Eastern Time. You can join with a visual, your image. You can join with a black screen. You can change your name and remain anonymous. It's perfectly fine. Many of the podcasts are me presenting a topic, and then generally I like to do things in series. So it's not just a drop, information drop. And then if it's a multi section series, then maybe by the second or third podcast on that topic, we open it up and we have a time when we don't record and we do an exchange verbally. Questions, answers, problems. I coach when I'm working with someone online through a podcast or whatever. That is not counseling. That is coaching, all right, or just suggestions. Counseling is a private one-on-one, and it is done through Zoom. And I have recently discovered that in the United States, many of the insurance companies, under their international team of finance, have codes, which I can give you. If you can't find support close to home, or you can't find support that is working well for you. What else would you like to know, Jim?
It's really rich resource that you're offering to the community. Yeah, I so respect your effort of doing the weekly podcast. I feel like this population needs a lot of support because this, even though this is such a prevalent issue, but not enough people talk about it. At
Mhm.
least not enough people talk about it in a understanding and compassionate way. Like sometimes people feel like, well, I am the only person, the odd person, that I have this secret issue that I can't say. And so it's so important to have that weekly support. Not only people are learning from hearing the presentations, and it's also helping people to connect with like-minded people and to know that they are not alone in this.
No, for sure. That's a very good point, particularly and probably for your podcast as well, that they become part of a group informally, and they see and hear other people who they don't know at all, but they learn that they like them. They respect what they have to say. They clearly are intelligent, capable people, and then being able to own, well, if I'm in a group talking about a topic with people who are like that, I'm not flawed. I'm not defective. I'm not the shame or the embarrassment or the fear I feel. And that can be very um, supportive. I wouldn't call it rewarding, but it's supportive so that it can help the individual. We are not the problems we have. All right. That's not our identity. That's a behavior choice that maybe we have habituated for reasons we don't understand. Okay, let's understand it. Let's give you the tools to dig that out and put in place what you want for yourself. And that is doable. That is doable.
Exactly, exactly. That's so beautifully put. Exactly. And so, Elaine, you started to work with this population since 23 years ago. And for people who are listening, this is amazing because
Well, it means I'm old. Yes.
and also that you're one of the pioneers. Yeah.
Because I worked with the pioneers. All
Mhm,
right. So I can't take a credit of being a pioneer. But when I won't say who I was working for, but I was the one lone social worker in a medical department and not a hospital. And we kept encountering the same community partners at emergency calls we were called out to. And, after a little while, we thought, gee, we should really get together and talk about this because we don't really understand what we're seeing. It's, and it's a problem. It is a problem for housing. It's a problem for stress. It's a problem for health. It's a problem for homelessness.
yeah,
Uh, Eviction is the highest risk factor for homelessness, and homelessness is the highest risk factor for hoarding.
right.
Pretty linear relationship, and it's a direct route given enough time. We don't want people to face that, and they
Mhm.
don't have to. All right. And so we just, I was tasked with, because in a former job, I developed workshops and I presented and yada, yada, yada. And they said, okay, well, you know how to do this. Would you do a little research and would you, put together a workshop? We thought we'd have like 25 community partners,
Hmm.
right? And so I got on the internet and I looked up, okay, who knows what they're talking about. And it turned out that Randy Frost's name came up. So
Hmm.
I didn't know. I thought, okay, get your cheekiness on here. Just call Randy Frost and say, we have a problem and we'd like to know more about it. And how about it? And Randy was thrilled. And so when I started to advertise it, I had federal government departments asked to attend. I had the Ontario Fire Marshal's office call me and say, can can we send a team?
Mm.
I had the federal government departments and sometimes too when you're um, networking, you're talking things, through. And I came up with friends of mine who knew people that I was never going to get to know,
Mhm.
and they happened to have their phone number. And so I thought, just put together like a 3-minute spiel on why this should matter to them and call them. What's the worst they can do?
Mhm.
So I did, and one of them agreed, well, a number of them agreed to come. We had deputy ministers come. All
Mm.
right. In fact, the room only held 200 people. And yeah, I got the wrong size room when I rented it, and we had 35 self-respecting professionals sneak in because the registration was full. And the whole day, I had my heart in my mouth because the Ontario Fire Marshal's Department was there and we were over capacity.
Mm.
And I thought, this is important. And that fellow who was a very senior member in the federal government, all right, we gave them a specialty table. He on his way out said to me, we have to talk. And I thought, that sounds good, actually. That doesn't sound like bad news. So
Mhm.
we talked and we ended up getting two pretty favorable financial support for research projects.
Mm.
And we hired a consultant who could help us set up a framework. And so if you are an agency or you are an organization, you can go on my website and under resources, the No Room to Spare report is there. If you're just starting out, it will save you 2 years work. All right. It's a formula and a plan for how to organize, all credible. And as I sat and I listened to Randy, and of course, once you meet Randy, you meet Gail Steckity, all right, because
Mhm.
they're kind
Yeah.
of like hair. And I thought, I understand this. I understand how people could end up in that situation. That's
Mhm.
not a mystery. Like
Mm.
there are a flood of reasons why people might end up in that state of mind.
Mhm.
Not choosing that option. It isn't an option people choose.
Right.
They inadvertently end up creating it. And then once they do and they habituate those patterns that they aren't aware are a pattern,
Mhm.
or they think are self-care and
Mhm.
self-protective, but they
Mhm.
don't actually yield the protection. They yield a lot of shame, a
Right.
lot, a lot of worry about being found, a lot of defensiveness that people
Mhm.
challenge their logic.
Mhm.
Um, that's not a way to live. And sooner or later, whatever we habituate, we are going to specialize in. It's going to be the main feature in our life. There is help to help not to undo it, but to help you make considered decisions that you can understand that consequence is beyond what I want. I don't want the consequence. I do want the choice in moderation.
Mhm.
Right? And so then we had to do a second workshop. The first workshop was just about um, what is hoarding, basically.
Mhm. Mhm.
Maybe 6 months later, we put on a second workshop, got
Mhm.
Randy back,
Mhm.
and we talked about, okay, now what do you do about it?
Mhm.
Government departments shut down for the 2 days, all right, to attend. They
Wow.
took we took it seriously. Yeah, in Canada, we did. We took
Good.
it seriously.
Good.
And then I left that department and I decided, what am I going to do? And I was offered a really great job. And I always ask for 24 hours to consider overnight, even when I love the offer. Okay. And so I had been going all around the country doing training, um, sponsored by my former employer. And I thought, who's going to continue that?
Mm.
We've only really, like 3, 5 years, we've only really started.
Mhm.
And I turned down the great job
Mm.
and said, nope, I'm going to do this.
That's
And
wonderful. That's
whatever
great.
whatever happens, good, bad, or indifferent, this is what I'm going to do.
Mm.
And it has been like a tsunami
Wow.
uh, of requests. Yeah. And my motto is where possible. I have a lot of free resources on hoarding.ca,
Mm.
and that's because I feel really strongly that anybody who wants to improve or wants to get themselves out of this situation or somebody they love, to help them, it shouldn't boil down to do you have the money?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it should not boil down to do you have the money. So within the podcast, Conquer the Clutter on Wednesday morning, as I said, from 11 until noon Eastern time is free. You do have to subscribe. So you just go to hoarding.ca and
Mhm.
you subscribe. It's free. All right. There's no cost, no expectation. Then we know who should be there. And if there's anybody who shouldn't be there, we can easily identify them and stop that in the bud. So that's why we did that. There are all sorts of other free resources as well. So it's a great place to go to start.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. It's such a it's so telling, right? Like when you first started that workshop, like
I know. I thought we're going to
so
get
many,
closed down.
yeah, so many authorities, they are like, even though it wasn't a thing back then,
Oh,
but once you name it, like people are like, yes, this exists. We're gonna
mhm,
do something about it, even though we don't have a name for it or we don't know what to do yet. But
mhm,
it's definitely a phenomenon
mhm.
that
You know,
everybody
it's
sees.
been around since the beginning of time. We called
Right.
it pack rat. We called it all kinds of other names. Now we have the language. It isn't
Right.
more popular. It isn't more prevalent. All right. It isn't. People are people. They've always been people.
Yeah.
Um, and no, it's not really got fundamentally anything to do with our commercial
Mm.
society, all right, a materialist society. That's not. You can hoard potatoes. You can hoard something else. It's a behavior choice that sometimes becomes involuntary
Right.
or starts out voluntarily and you become vulnerable and then you stop whatever that control mechanism was. All right. And no, it's been happening since the beginning of time. And it happens in every country as well. It's just the nature of the thing that is overly acquired and held on to is different. That's culturally relevant to whatever that society is. Now
Right.
we have the language.
Right.
That's the thing that all of the talk. all of the research has done. The Diagnostic Manual of Mental Health Disorders, version 5, made it a discrete disorder in its own right. And it's important to say that if you are functionally enough impaired by hoarding, it could constitute a disability. And if it does constitute a disability, and you can have that affirmed, you have rights under the human rights legislation everywhere in North America. All right. And I'm sure other places too, but I know North America.
Mhm.
And you have the right to reasonable
Mhm.
accommodation, all
Mhm.
right, for your disability, just like other people with other disabilities have. And that's really important when you're facing eviction
Mhm.
or you're facing some other kind of judgment or penalty. All right. Reasonable accommodation. It is not the right to maintain the risk
Mhm.
and possibly pass it on to others
Mhm.
who inadvertently could be at risk and not know it,
Mhm.
um, particularly where items are combustible or they're, you don't have to have a dirty home to have mice. You don't have to have a dirty home. Whatever supports a food source and a nesting source, something is going to move in, and you can't see it soon enough. That's
Mhm.
all. All right. And so there's nothing to be ashamed about. There's no judgment, but
Yeah,
it does carry a risk, and it's
right,
probably a risk you're not intending.
right. Yeah. So this is indeed very true, like the human nature, right? So it often I feel like we all have sometimes experience a like unexplainable sense of insecurity. We don't feel safe somehow. And then that unsafeness, it's almost like you can almost say that it's primal. You can say, well, but I have a roof above me, I have a job, I have this or that. Why do I feel a sense of not safeness? And why do I feel anxious? And when we are anxious, we may reason say, oh, this thing's making me anxious. But is it really? If that thing is not there, there's always some other thing that you
Mhm.
put as the target of your anxiety, right? So there's that deep down, sometimes we somehow feel not safe. And for some, it manifested into like, I want more control if I don't feel safe. And sometimes people exert control over having things or keeping things or having more like predictability, right? And so this is kind of like one of the ways this insecurity, this not feeling safe manifest into a behavior.
We teach our children too, as families, we teach our children some pretty bizarre things, frankly. It reflects on you if something unforeseen happens and you're not prepared. There's something wrong with you. Like, really? When did that start? What kind of sense does that actually make? And so having three of them really doesn't make you safer because in the pile you can't find it. And what do you do? Because you are feeding a need. And I wanted to give a pitch to Brianna Wiest, all
Mm,
right, the author of The Mountain Is You. Read the book, people. Where she, I guess if I boil it all down, it's that the symptoms we have, the first place to look is at what is the unmet need,
mhm.
because chances are they are our effort to cover what is an unmet need that we're experiencing. All
Yeah.
right. And I say, whatever struggle you're having, all right, ask yourself three questions. What do you need? Where is it? And how do you get enough of it to make enough of a difference? Not a
Mm,
perfect difference, not a
mm,
complete, permanent, but enough of a difference. And put yourself and your needs equal with anybody else's. The other book I really want to pitch
mm.
is Procrastination. All right. And that's written by Jane Burka and Lenora Ewan. There is nothing you are ever going to need to know about procrastination that is not in that book. All right. So
Awesome.
if you find yourself procrastinating, get the book. All right. Yeah.
We will put the link of the book
Okay.
below as well
Okay.
as other resources that you mentioned today. Yeah, so that people can find it more easily. Yeah. So Elaine, you've had 23 years of experiences supporting this community. Can you share how almost like in the beginning of how not just you, like collectively in the field, how people see this issue and how people help with this issue and how this has evolved in the past 23 years? Do you see any trend?
I guess the trend I see is the habit to go back to Do you really need it? And I
Mm.
think that is the most useless question on the face of the universe, frankly. And putting people on the defensive to justify.
Right.
I do in the therapy I do, I help people understand what skills and strengths they have to
Mm.
make considered decisions.
Mhm.
And then we scope out what are the risks.
Mm.
Okay? Because in every decision we make, you and I, everybody else,
Yeah.
once we make a decision, there are certain things we're cutting ourselves off from in order to open ourselves to something else.
Right.
And that putting yourself on pause, you always have the right to take the time to kind of reset yourself and
Mhm.
ask yourself, what do I need?
Mhm.
Is it this? Where is it? Probably not in that. That is a substitute. And Brianna Wiest, in her book, The Mountain is You, said something that just really resonated with me. And that is the symptoms we have, particularly when they're not positive, all right, they're not working that well for us, um, generally point to an unmet need we have. They are our attempt to satisfy an unmet need. Ask yourself,
Mhm.
how long does that unmet need get satisfied by the choices you're making?
Yeah.
And put yourself on pause and ask yourself, are there better options? And if there are better options, find the person who can help you find your better options if they don't come to mind right away. You won't be doing that forever, but
Yeah.
you'll be on your own path rather than regroup, regroup, regroup.
Right. Yeah, that tracks. Like, it seems like earlier on when we are helping people, we are more focusing or like in the beginning stage of us figuring out what hoarding is, how do we help. The eyes are more on the stuff. It's more on the number of items one have. And so like that, therefore focusing on, do you need this? And is this enough? If this is not enough, or how many years have you used it? If you haven't used it, you probably don't need it. It's all surrounding like limiting the items. Like you said, Elaine, it's like later on we're realizing that's not addressing the core issue.
Well,
The Yeah, the root issue is that there is some unmet needs or there is some like sense of insecurity or sense of not feeling safe. Therefore, we're using these things as a coping mechanism.
it's a device. It is. It's a device. Yeah.
It's a device, yeah. Yeah. And so, for example, like more and more people are discovering like sometimes we feel like we want these things because we don't feel good about ourselves. We want to have these things, so somehow we feel better about ourselves. Or sometimes we want these things because we don't get enough comfort from interpersonal connections. So we somehow feel like there's a void and I feel lonely, but being surrounded by my stuff, it feels less lonely, less empty.
Mhm.
Coming back to what you're saying about where's the unmet needs? Can I really see it for what it really is? And then have the courage, even though sometimes the more helpful way to get the unmet needs get the unmet needs met is more challenging, right? It requires vulnerability, right? Like going out and make friends and being vulnerable with friends to feel that connection. It requires more courage and more healing than if I just go and get these things surrounding me. I feel like it's like a band-aid. It's a quick fix. It makes me feel much better and easier, and but it's short-lived.
When I feel shamed, though, or I feel less than, or I feel if people knew the truth, which is a common inside thought, oh, yeah, if people knew the truth, what I go home to, um, it's pretty hard to do authentic friend making.
Right.
Um, and what you also don't want to do is you don't want to get in the boat with someone who's sinking because you don't feel enough. An interesting thing happened in a discussion I was having with a young woman this week. Um, she shares a house, all right, and she has a child. And I said, "So what is the division? How much space do you have?"
Mm.
And she said, "Well, there are certain places um, that I'm allowed." And I thought that's an interesting way to phrase that. So I wrote it down in my notes and I thought we'll come back to that. So this week in our session, I said, "You made an interesting comment." And she said, "Oh," I said, "Yeah." you said there are certain places in the house you're allowed. And but she used I'm allowed. All right. And I said, do you mean geographically, like physically, you as a person are allowed there? Oh no, I'm allowed all over the house. And I said, so you share a house, but it's pretty open as far as not my space, your space. She said, well, other than bedrooms and that kind of thing, yeah. And I said, can you tell me a little more about there are certain places I'm allowed? And she said, well, I was talking about my stuff.
Mm.
And I said, would you be interested in reflecting on the wording I'm allowed? And she said, sure. And I said, so your stuff is you? You are your stuff? She stopped and she said, and I said, so don't panic. I said, no, we're not going to get terribly profound here. We're just going to observe. Okay, no need. And I said, what is it about the stuff?
Mhm.
For you, I respect what you say. Okay. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, yeah, you're wrong. No, no. I want to know what is your relationship with your things, that they are you. And we got into a very, very deep discussion and exchange around I'm not good enough. I'm always trying to look better. I'm never happy with my appearance. In fact, I'm not happy with my job, even though it's a pretty good job. So we will be doing more not digging, but tracking back to where did that start? And was it true then?
Mhm.
Because chances are it started quite young with expectations from parents
Mhm.
or casual kinds of verbal exchanges where the child takes away a message. And I guess, to kind of put it on not the profound, dig deep, it is deep, but not everything that happened to us was intentional.
Mhm.
Took it away and we swallowed it and we did something with it. We gave it a meaning. We integrated it. Sometimes it isn't that was what a parent meant. All
Mhm.
right. It's
Yeah.
the takeaway that we live at such a pace, we don't check the message we give or the message we receive. Well, do you mean that you think I'm not attractive or I'm not well dressed or I'm not whatever? We don't stop to make sure that we're on the right path with that exchange as well. And who knows what we took away that then got loaded on by other things, maybe bullying at school. All right, well, you can't be as damaged and injured, all
Mhm.
right, being bullied at school. You are going to be, it's a question of degree, if you came into it with good self-esteem
Mhm.
and somebody in your family who you love and trust who would hold your coat in a fight. It's an Irish term. And so you had people behind you to support you,
Mhm.
believed in you. All right. When you don't have that, or when a family is challenged because they're under-resourced and overtaxed, they
Mhm.
don't have the time or resources quite often to deal with the small stuff that then reinforces a child who goes out and starts having these experiences that become bruises
Yeah.
that get pressured later in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's so much like unpacking and reprocessing and re-choosing what is
Mhm.
the new path, what is the new perspective that we want to take with us going forward. And sometimes I even feel like every disorder, if you will, or every problem that we have is an opportunity for
Mhm.
us to heal, right?
Mhm.
If we didn't have these problems, we probably wouldn't slow down and turn internally and try to heal what's going on in back in the who knows when. Yeah, and so this is definitely a process of healing rather than a process of fixing or
Great.
shaming.
I think there is a little fixing to it as well,
Mhm.
because I agree 100% with you. I also see it as this is time for us to revisit the garbage we're carrying in our backpack.
Right. Yeah.
Because if it was a lunch from 3 weeks ago, you'd smell it.
Mhm.
If it's something that was not a good thing that happened and you're still carrying it, can you expect it to be improving? Can
Mhm.
you expect it to support you? Let's unpack the backpack
Mhm.
and ask yourself, who are you today?
Mhm.
Who are you today? Not
Mhm.
just who you want to be, but you can't possibly still be alive standing up if there aren't good things that you can say, positive things you can say about yourself.
Mhm.
And those are the things to focus on. for get a handle on the automatic human negative bias we have
Mm-hmm.
to always see what's wrong.
Yeah.
All right. At the same time, something is not what it needs to be. There's
Mhm.
a whole host of other things over here on the other side you're not paying attention to that are
Mhm.
also true about you,
Right.
or, or you wouldn't be curious and trying to get better.
Right.
The
Right.
contradiction. All right. And so, what are they? Remind yourself of those things. Build
Mhm.
on strength. Always work from strength, not fear.
Mhm.
Never give in to fear. Never give in to fear. All
Mhm.
right. Get the facts. Get the
Mhm.
facts and use your strengths to use those so that you can be where you want to be today moving forward.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So I have another question for you, Elaine. So I think that we are kind of starting to touch on this, but I wonder if you can share more kind of clearly about a typical healing trajectory that you see from a person seeking help or even before they sought help. Like, what do you see as a typical trajectory?
Very often, it depends on the comorbidity.
Mm,
Some comorbidities are, and how long you've lived
right,
with a dysfunctional comorbidity. All
right,
right.
right,
Uh, so I want to manage expectations here.
right.
You can always find your way out. If
Mhm,
you're cognitively intact, you can always find your way out with the right guide. All right. You
mhm.
can. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about the 16-hour turnaround we did yesterday with somebody.
Sounds
Okay.
great.
So, without mentioning names, the person is in an interesting profession
Mhm,
um, that has a lot of rules and a lot of community.
mhm,
Um, they are different from their community. They focus on one vulnerable aspect and they associate themselves, they consider that their mission in life. All right. Um, it's noble, but it's not well received because it's not common. So there would be a lack of normal community to support you.
mhm,
Not enemies, not negative, all
mhm,
right, but not supportive.
mhm,
And then added to that, health problems,
mm,
right? And so, as this person has graduated to being a senior,
mhm,
and they are living in supported living, not an old folks home or anything, but supported living.
mm,
Um, they are used to being minimized,
mm,
uh, so that's not a surprise.
mhm,
However, as a consequence of, and there are consequences to the way we present ourselves, all
mhm,
right? And we don't stand up for ourselves. And so this person was put in a living space that's basically 1.5 rooms
mm,
um, with a bathroom and a small little kitchen area. And nobody thought, all right, because she's already um, scrutinized would be the right word. All right. Nobody really thought about the physical reality of her coming with all of the furniture that was made available for her. And the furniture is way too big
mm,
for the space.
mm,
Consequently, everything that she puts down has an exponential impact of looking cluttered,
right,
right? Doesn't take very long. And as I say, um, the she's got amazing self-esteem without being assertive,
mhm,
right? And so it helps too when somebody who works with the individual doesn't just focus on the problem with the individual, the stuff. All
mhm,
right.
mhm,
You have to attend to that because that is the deal breaker for whatever needs to be remedied, right? And the person understands that. You're not doing them a favor if you befriend them and you don't help them
right.
resolve that. Okay, but the other thing too is quite often um, when people get depressed or they get down on themselves, they don't ask themselves rational questions like, um, do I have the right resources?
Mhm,
Do I have? So if your books are lying all over the place, think IKEA, all right? And get yourself a double billy.
mm,
And so what we did yesterday was we helped her, all right, with her community,
mm,
turn the apartment around.
Mhm.
And I help to advocate for her with the community leader
Mhm.
that you can't expect in this little space a person to live, have any kind of a meaningful life when the furniture she has is not appropriate to the things she needs, all
Yeah.
right? And she doesn't need, you add an air of reality as well. She
Mhm.
does have a problem with accumulating. She
Mhm.
does, holding on, all
Mhm.
right? It's more the holding on.
Mhm.
And maybe we could talk about the tube, the hoarding tube in a minute. So she does hold on, but she comes from a background of scarcity. So that is a sensible, responsible thing to do. All right. So we solved that problem yesterday. Now, will it remain solved? She and I will work together on making better choices.
Mhm.
We resolved that with three bookcases, all right, two drawers,
Mhm.
two sets of shelves in the kitchen, and a few resources that she didn't have.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And the apartment was a completely different environment for
Mhm.
her.
Mhm.
Uh, and also, the community was put on notice that they were partly responsible, right?
Mhm.
Because she's been in this apartment for 5 years. All right. And has anybody gone in and looked at really
Mhm.
what was lying around? No. People went in and made a judgment about how cluttered it was rather than what's the solution.
Right.
Now, the solution sometimes is the right resources. Use the vertical space.
Mhm.
All right. Any place will look like a severely hoarded environment. All
Mhm.
right. If the stuff is lying around all over the floor and on every flat surface,
Mhm.
use the vertical space. And from then, once you rehouse things that are deemed to be really important to the person, all
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
you see what's left and you can make decisions about how important those things actually are to you because somebody has walked in and validated the fact that you have the right to see an importance in something and you have the right to get some help in housing that so it remains a support.
Mhm.
Every one of those things that she
Mhm.
had that got rehoused
Mhm.
were like part of her life.
Right.
What part of your life do you think you should give up? All right, just because somebody walks in your room and says there's just way too much stuff in here, you're going to get evicted.
Right on. Right on.
And they did it and did it and did it and did it and did it until she had 4 days left,
Mhm.
all right, before they were going to serve her with eviction.
Mhm.
So that speaks to another issue as well. Sometimes when people are facing that kind of stress, they go this rather than like this, all right? Where's the help?
Yeah.
What do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to make enough of a difference?
Mhm.
So in 4 days,
Mhm.
we turned that around. And now with some ongoing support
Mhm.
uh, and the things that are the most important to her around her, to
Mhm.
remind her of a life she's had that was wonderful, not rich,
Mhm.
not bountiful, but wonderful. All right. Though
Mhm.
that will remind her who she is and what she's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So it does sound like you, I was gonna ask you like, is a lot of times people ask me, is hoarding curable or do you ever see successful cases? And I often say, well, define successful.
Mhm.
What does successful look like? Because
Mhm.
sometimes people think, oh, healing hoarding is all about like making somebody's house look like not cluttered at all or
Mhm.
look like a magazine. Of course not, right? And so for some, maybe the outcome they want from like looking out, if we are only looking on the stuff, the outcome they want maybe is like a functional space. And
Mhm.
maybe it's more stuff than maybe most people or maybe you would like, but it's functional. It's like you said, like it's still stuff there to remind her about a good person, a good life that she's
All
yeah.
the things you won't do again. Safety first, though. That's the thing I say to my clients. Safety first. There's no way around. In our case, the entire Ontario Fire Code, but wherever you are in the States as well, there will be a fire code. I can find out what it is. And that needs to be established because you taking responsibility. Okay, facts are facts, truth is truth. And the truth is that if an environment remains overly accumulated, particularly with combustible materials, they are a risk to themselves on a few fronts. All right. And so are the people unsuspectingly who live in close proximity. That's not something that any one of us has the right to make somebody who doesn't know they're at risk. And the individual hoarding doesn't need to be the cause of the crisis.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
person who has a pristine home may have a kitchen fire.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
right.
Right.
Point is, you're not getting out as fast enough, because you are surrounded by combustible materials that are going to probably disable you before you get to the door. And the whole, in attached accommodation, the whole building now has a fuel load that is not predictable.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
The firefighters don't know where to go if it's the apartment next door that is the fuel load. All right. So if you're in attached accommodation, you have to be more conservative. And so, can you get better from hoarding? Can you get better from diabetes?
Mm-hmm.
That's the analogy I say. Yeah, it's just like diabetes. You know what? With the right care, with the right attention, with the right support,
Mm-hmm.
sure, you can lead a long life and it can be as meaningful as whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever you don't have to be ill. There's no person on the face of this earth who doesn't have some challenge, at least one, major one, that they deal with. All
Mm-hmm.
right. None of us are exempt. This person that we're looking at just happens to be hoarding.
Mm-hmm.
What is your issue? What is your issue? What is your issue?
Right.
And going in and fixing it
Mm-hmm.
is better for the doer
Mm.
than the
Right.
other. All
Right.
right. It's going to make you comfortable. All right. But if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Mm-hmm.
There are reasons why this is happening, and you need to help that person understand what their unique reasons are
Right.
and what their strengths are to meet it, which is individual to that person. There
Right.
is no blanket. Let's have a protocol. No, let's not have a protocol. Okay, let's understand who this person is and get them to understand. Always deal from your strengths.
Yeah.
Everybody, if you have the ability to dial a phone and look for help or go online and look for help, you have strengths. You have
Mm-hmm.
strengths that you're not acknowledging, and resources. All right. And from that, we build.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you so much, Elaine. Yeah, I think that's a good message to end. And I want to just reiterate, paraphrasing, excuse me for that. But I feel like what you just said was so important. It's like it's not like one size fit it all.
No.
If you really want to help a loved one who is struggling with hoarding issues, it's not about, okay, I'm gonna set the parameters for them to fit in the parameters and give them some guidelines to follow. And well, of course, there's some guidelines are useful, but the guidelines has to be collaborative.
Mhm.
Come from really trying to understand, really, really well understanding why does this person do this? What is the function that it's serving them?
Mhm.
What are the unmet needs
Mhm.
that they're doing these things? And also what are their strengths?
Mhm.
And then build on the strengths rather than build on the shortcoming and like shaming them, punishing them. That never works.
No, the other side, that everything in balance, right? So on the one side, the support, the respect,
Right.
they're in control. All
Right.
right. But there will be a consequence. Do you want the consequence? We don't dictate the consequence. The consequence is the nature of whatever the cost is for doing what you're doing.
Right.
The other side of that balance is taking responsibility.
Right.
All right. So
Right.
help is, but not in a way that infantilizes the person and makes them dependent or like a child that needs. And no, everybody has their place, everybody has their rights, and your right is to take responsibility for
Mhm.
what you want out of life,
Mhm.
and to make sure that you're not taking the other person's right as well, because when you coexist with people, one of the other things that is very, very true, each of us has our own threshold
Mhm.
for clutter and
Mhm.
for chaos. All
Mhm.
right. And while you need this right now for you to be comfortable, to feel secure,
Mhm.
you may be costing the other person their right to peace of mind and a lack of anxiety, um, for the fact that they don't share your threshold. So, what is the compromise and how do we get there if you coexist? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So well said, and so important to hear that reminder about
Mhm.
balancing compassion and boundary at
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
time.
But personal responsibility, you've got a disorder, you've got a comorbidity. All right, you do. Now, it's not that we fix you, it's that you learn to live by making choices with whatever you have, the comorbidity. All
Mhm.
right. It's
Mhm.
yours.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And chances are you didn't ask for it. You may have inherited it. All right. But it's yours. That's your responsibility.
Right.
And you need to take responsibility for that and accept.
Mhm.
That does not mean that it is the excuse for everything. Yeah.
Right. Something that you have to work with.
Absolutely. Factor in.
Yes.
Factor in and get past. Yes.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Elaine.
You're
Yeah.
most welcome.
Yeah. I want to talk a lot more, but
Our
we're
time's up.
working with the limit here.
That's
That's
right.
why.
We are. We are.
Yeah. Thank you
It's
so much.
lovely speaking with you.
Yeah. Likewise. Likewise.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invitation.